Well, there's some disturbing Zika news here in the U.S. Utah health officials say an elderly patient who was infected with the virus has died. While the exact cause, they say, is unclear, this does mark the very first death related to Zika right here in the continental U.S.
Okay, and to talk about it now, we have our Fox News Medical A-team, Dr. Mark Siegel, Professor of Medicine at NYU's Langone Medical Center, and Dr. David Samadi, Chairman and Professor of Urology at Lenox Hill Hospital and Chief of Robotic Surgery. Good to see you both, Doc.
Good to see you.
And we want to make an important note that they say that this is not from a mosquito here in the U.S. The patient had been in a Zika zone. So we want to tie this into the Olympics. There are many reporters and some athletes, as you know, who have said they're not going as a result. Dr. Siegel, is that a legitimate concern? And then we want to say, if those people go, God forbid they get bitten, people are concerned, do they bring that back now?
Well, first of all, it's a totally different issue in Brazil than here. There's been over 100,000 cases in Brazil, 1,000 cases here. Brazil has a problem with mosquito control, but it's going towards the winter there now, and chances are the number of Zika cases are going to die down there, number one. Number two, even people that bring it here to the United States, Arthel, the key is, will it spread among our native mosquitoes here? You know, one death of a woman like this, it's tragic, but she had other medical complications that we don't know about. She was also elderly. Zika very, very rarely kills, almost never. So this isn't a message, you know, this is a deadly virus. The biggest concern about this virus is that it affects the brain in unborn infants, and that's what we have to focus on. So if it did take hold here and start to spread, it would be a problem. They're looking at that very seriously in Florida, and there's no sense right now that it's going to have sustained spread down there.
I think it's important to note, as you said, this was not from a mosquito here. The woman apparently had been in a Zika zone. So how worried should we be about the mosquitoes in our country?
If you recall, about 9 months ago, you and I, we both had conversation about this. And we were the first one that actually called it, that Zika. It was very clear that I said, Zika is not going to be a major epidemic. And I took a little heat for this. It's like, how do you know ahead of time? The reason why this is not going to be a huge problem, and so far CDC says that there's no live transmission of Zika in the United States. Everybody that have seen this has either traveled to one of these Zika centers or a man has gotten it and they have transferred it through sexual activity. So are we going to see more of these cases? Possibly. In this particular case of the patient who died, there are other medical issues that may have contributed to this and not directly as a result of Zika. 80% of the time, people may not know that even they have Zika virus, number one, or if they may get fever or red eye or chills or joint pain, that will resolve within days to weeks. Now, if you're planning to be pregnant, if you're planning to be with somebody who's been in the Zika zone and they come back for about 6 months, you have to have protected sex and use condoms and protect yourself because of microcephaly. But the odds of somebody that would want to be pregnant, has sex, gets the Zika virus, and ends up with microcephaly, you have to go through all of those. Those odds are very low, and I don't think it's going to be a huge problem here.
Dr. Siegel, I want to pick up on something you mentioned, and you said that if a mosquito, and see if I understood this properly, correctly. So if somebody gets bitten in a Zika zone, right, gets the virus, now they're back here at home. We're not talking about sexual contact. What if another mosquito here bites the person with the Zika virus?
That has not happened yet. That's exactly what they're vigilant about in Florida. And by the way, you hit a key point here, which is that mosquito spread is the key way it spreads, much, much, much more commonly than sexual spread. And you know what? The chances of it having a sustained outbreak in even Florida is extremely low, if non-existent, because we already have a history of dengue fever, which rides on the same mosquito and has never taken off here. This virus, I agree with David, will not take off here.
I think what people need to know is that, you know, a lot of people travel to all over the world. We have a global, you have to prepare yourself. Make sure you get pre-travel information, get the vaccine and immunization, and learn about how to protect yourself.
Bottom line, it seems, don't worry.
Yes,
don't worry.
At this point, I would not.
If you're pregnant, don't travel to Brazil, though, if you're pregnant.
Okay,
right,
thank you, Dr. Siegel, Dr. Samadi.